an alarm system. How much they cost?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting for the month of September. Ryan tells me there are some issues with the audio visual functions in the room tonight. The county is working on it. And I have to speak up as much as I possibly can. So if it sounds like I'm yelling, I apologize. At this point, I'd like to call the meeting to order. You all rise for a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have the approval of our agenda. Any discussion? We have a motion to approve. Mr. Smutsky, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. Approval of the minutes from the meeting of August the 19th. That was regular meeting. I have no comments. Mr. Lewis?
I have no comments.
Mr. Smutsky?
I continue on the, says regular meeting, August 18th.
Well, I don't have my calendar. Was it?
Well, it said August 19th on the agenda.
I'll take it.
Okay.
I'll correct that.
Thank you.
And was it the 18th or the 19th?
The 19th was a Tuesday.
Okay. So we'll make that August 19th. Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes from August 19th, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then it is approved. At this time, we'll have public comment. If there's anybody in the gallery who would like to make a comment, please come up. Okay.
There were not any submitted online by 5 p.m.
Nobody online? We are moving right along. Director's report now.
Okay, I only have a few things for you. First, I would like to recognize Ryan Childress. He has recently been recognized by the county for 5 years of service, so I saved his certificate to present to him in the meeting. I'll just have to get you a frame for your cube.
Cube, sweet cube.
Yep. Okay. And then the other thing I just wanted to do is provide some updates on where we are with preparations for the upcoming municipal elections. We did get sample ballots yesterday. We uploaded those and attached them to the ballot styles last night. And so today, any voters can look up their voter record and see a copy of their sample ballot. So if a person is eligible to vote in the municipal election, so not all Brunswick County voters are eligible to participate in the municipal election, it will show a ballot style, and it's actually a hyperlink that you can click on, and you'll get a PDF version of your sample ballot. If you are not eligible to vote in the municipal elections, which means you don't live in a municipality, one of the sanitary districts, or Dozier Hospital area, it would say no eligible ballots, and that is how a person would know that they aren't eligible to vote in this election. So I did put out a social media post today, sent out one of our emails to our sunshine list, so that is now out there and available.
Before we continue,
Yes.
I am under the impression, and I was told this a number of years ago, that if your street address ends in a compass direction, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, it's an unincorporated county address.
I am not going to attest to that.
Okay.
I think that used to be really easy to say that was the rule, but I would not say that every street in our database is still like that. So I would not, no, I won't say that.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
And then, the next point I posted, I've actually already had an update on Washington accuracy testing. We've had a conflict for when I thought we would conduct that. So what I will say is, if you subscribe to our emails, we will send an email notice out shortly with the days that we plan to do Washington accuracy testing of the voting equipment. That process is open to the public, so anyone can come watch us perform the logic and accuracy testing. We do also live stream that. Every day that we're doing the testing, we have a live stream for our board meetings on for that. So stay tuned to the email to find out when we're going to be doing that.
Am I correct that almost every meeting we have that is associated with ballots or the equipment associated with the election, counting ballots as absentee ballots, everything is always in a public meeting, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So anybody that's interested can come and observe and or do it via the link that's on our website.
Yes, and I will just add to that, the link that's for our board meetings, we don't change that every meeting, so it's always the same link. So if you think we've got a meeting going on, click on it and see if we're live. So, I also just want to say, yes.
One more thing, who will be doing the testing?
So we use bipartisan precinct officials, so we utilize those that get trained as machine technicians in the polling place because they're familiar with our equipment and it kind of gives them a little bit of practice. And so each day we will have equal representation of registered Democrats and registered Republicans doing that process. Yes.
Thank you.
We did start in-person training today. As you know, we utilize over 300 precinct officials for most elections. And so we will be training for several weeks, all day long. And so far it seems to be going really well. So I just wanted to let you know that that's underway.
Who's conducting that?
Cheryl, so we have brought on a new temporary part-time staff member that will conduct all of the training sessions. Melissa is managing that process with Cheryl, so today Cheryl taught both classes and Melissa sat in just to answer questions and make sure nothing came up that was too out of left field.
Good question. Is there a calendar for the training, is that online?
I'm sorry.
I actually calendar the training.
So I will have to let Melissa email you that. I don't know where you would find that. I do not think it's publicly available. Yeah, we send that to our precinct officials.
I like to attend one or two meetings.
Okay.
Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, Melissa can coordinate with you on that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you send that to the board? All board members? I'd like to consider it as well.
I will send information to all of the board members, and I will coordinate, which class they're going to come to, so that you're not multiple members there in the same, observing in the same class. I don't want to intend, the class size is limited, so I want to make sure there's enough room and the trainer is aware that you're going to be observing. So I'm happy to pass that information along and coordinate with you what classes you'd like to observe.
All right.
And then something else that I wanted to put on your radar, we're not prepared to make a decision or adopt a resolution today. With some of the changes with deadlines for absentee ballots, we now have to complete the count of all absentee ballots that are received by 7:30 p.m. by the time we go home election night. So we cannot leave until we finish that process. The law does allow us to start counting those ballots earlier in the day. So we would like to start that process at 2 p.m. on election day. I think not knowing what the volume will be like, but also to prepare us for what it's going to be like next year when there will be a higher volume, I would really like to do a dry run of starting that election day meeting earlier in the day. Seeing how we manage the process with how the precincts are running, making sure that too many staff members are not pulled away from helping the precincts. I just think it would be a great opportunity in the municipal election to do a dry run starting earlier. So I'll be bringing a future meeting, a resolution for that. Now I will make board members aware, once we start that process, you cannot leave. So you can't come at 2 o'clock and then go home, take a nap. you do have to remain present, at the location, so we can recess the meeting. And you can, go get some food, but you cannot leave the facility, you have to stick with us, until the end.
I think, I probably can commit to the board that we will have a quorum there for you. We will support whatever effort you feel is necessary. So, okay.
And then, oh, yes.
If we're not counting absentee ballots until election day, what are these other absentee meetings in October for?
So the absentee meetings leading up to election day are meetings that are mandated where the board considers the absentee application. So the envelope that a ballot is sent back in is considered the absentee ballot application. So the board reviews any that have been received by that absentee meeting date. You determine if it's eligible to be approved or if there's a problem with it and we need to, reach out to the voter or attempt to get that cured. We are allowed to do preparatory steps leading up to election day. So what we do in those absentee meetings is any ballots that the board approves, we can go ahead and have a bipartisan team open those envelopes and scan the ballots into our voting system at each of those meetings. And so that makes the election day process easier and quicker. And so
And that's what we've been doing.
that's what we've been doing leading up to election day, is that part of the process.
By state law, as you are quite aware, requires anybody casting an absentee ballot provided half the way before election day. When do we cover those situations? Is that between election day and canvass?
So those are all handled at Canvas. So what we do is we have a process where we review lists that we receive from the state board of elections to identify people that may not have been eligible on election day to cast the ballots that they might have done by absentee or early voting. And then we do an administrative board file challenge, and that challenge is heard at a Canvas meeting 10 days after the election. And then last thing regarding the municipal election is I will refer to Melissa. There was some dialogue, Mr. Pelt, between you and Melissa prior to the meeting about observers in a municipal election. And so I'm just gonna allow Melissa to expand on why observers in municipal elections are not permitted.
Just to make everyone aware, there was a change last year that went into effect at the beginning of last year that was changed by Senate Bill 747. So as of January 1st, 2024, the parties may appoint observers where the party has a candidate appearing on the ballot. This means that there must be an official party nominee on the ballot, identified on the ballot with the party. This change in law means that political parties are no longer entitled to appoint observers in nonpartisan elections. So there will be no inside observers in this election. Of course, there can be electioneering outside the buffer zone at any of our locations that are not restricted electioneering.
And that was a change in law as a result of Senate Bill, which was that again?
747, and it went into effect January 1st, 2024.
So there's no flexibility for us, we have to follow the law in this particular case.
That is correct.
Just for my clarification, this year there will be no observers, is that?
No inside observers in nonpartisan elections.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and I'll just add, all of our municipal elections are nonpartisan. There are some municipalities in the state that do have partisan municipal elections, but we don't have any of those.
But the law does allow for a candidate to ask for observers, right?
To my knowledge and the direction I have been given from the state, there are no inside observers in a municipal election. That is nonpartisan.
Just for the audience, I'd ask Alyssa if she would communicate what she just told us, and the ruling from the state boards and both party chairs within Brunswick County. So your party chairs will be receiving that same information.
I didn't have anything else for that.
Anybody have any questions on director's report? Okay. Unfinished business.
None.
I don't believe we have any. New business, appointment of early voting officials, municipal elections.
And so I will defer to Melissa Chambers to review the appointment of early voting officials for the municipal election.
In a similar but not quite exact process as election day, effective state law requires that for each primary election, county boards of election shall appoint precinct officials for each early voting site other than the board of elections office. And because our early voting site is not housed in the same building as our board of elections office, we do have to have appointed early voting officials. Each party was given notice that this meeting that we would be appointing, that you would be appointing early voting officials at this meeting. They did have the opportunity to submit a list of officials that they would like appointed, and their deadline for consideration was September 9th to submit any list. The list submitted by the Democrats was in the agenda packet, and the Republican Party declined to submit a list. Unlike election day, these appointments none of these appointments have to be unanimous. They allow you to appoint, obviously, several people because of early voting schedule, and not all workers are required to work every day of early voting. So the staff recommendation that you'll see attached is a list of those that are scheduled to work early voting. Because we only have one location, we don't need an extensive list. And that list shares what position they are expected to work in, and whether they are an assistant or a specialist role, and what position we would like you to appoint them to. I will note that the 3 individuals that I am recommending to be appointed as chief judges for early voting, you have already appointed as chief judges for election day. We try whenever possible to use leaders at our early voting sites that are also election day chief judges. Any of the other specialty roles, we ask that you appoint in the judge role. So they have more specialized experience than someone who works as an assistant, but also appointing this number allows us to make sure, because they don't work every day, allows us to make sure we have bipartisan representation and balance between the judge roles on every day of early voting, because not all of them will work the same day. We have to have some flexibility on scheduling.
Excuse me, Melissa, is there 1 shift or 2 shifts every day?
At the early voting location for the municipal, there's 1 shift.
It's 1 shift.
1 shift. But the workers do not have to be available every day that early voting is open. So they they will be able to tell us what days they are not available. I will let you know that all of the names submitted on the Democratic list are also on the staff recommended list.
Gentlemen, any discussion? We have a motion to approve the list.
I so moved.
I'm sorry, Stephen.
I move that we approve the list recommended by the staff.
I'd like to note that Ms. Clary is not with us this evening. I personally don't think she would have an issue. Mr. Lewis, would you like to wait for her to return? Or
I think we can, this does not require unanimous vote, that's,
It does not require unanimous.
I just let them move forward.
All right, somebody like to make a motion to approve it? You just did, okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Mr. Lewis made a motion to approve the list as submitted by staff.
I have a question, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, do the same rules apply to these nominees that apply to, the other appointments that we made? In other words, if the Democrat appointed and recommended somebody for a position, and there was no Republican in that, then we have to select the Democrat. Is that true?
Well, you have to select the, at least, what was the minimum Democratic list?
Any more discussion? No? David, anything else? No? No? Okay. All in favor of approving the list as submitted by staff, indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Unanimous.
Work on that appointment. All right, Mr. Chairman, you ready for me to proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion of early voting for the 2026 primary election. I will tell you, I do not need a vote on this tonight. I really thought that it would be beneficial if we had a meeting and were able to discuss it. As a board, we could discuss it here together. And then my hope is that we can come back at our regular meeting in October and vote on a plan for the 2026 primary election. So really, this is just for informational purposes only. I don't need you to be prepared to make a decision. Okay. Next slide, Ryan. Early voting parameters, I really just wanted to remind you what we're looking at for the primary election. Early voting is 17 days, starting February 12th and running through February 28th. On the last Saturday, all locations will be open from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. and that is by law. So we can decide, as a board, you can decide, I should say, to have satellite locations. So that is locations that are not at the board of elections office or our in lieu of site, which we use as the cooperative extension. So what we need to allow for other locations is a unanimous vote by the board members. If the board is unable to reach a plan, excuse me, unable to reach a plan that allows for satellite locations and weekend hours, the state board can adopt a plan for the county. And so just some of the other things that we're required to do is when we have satellite early voting sites, they must be open from 8 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. We cannot stray from that time frame. And if the satellite sites are open on Saturdays or Sundays, all of the satellite sites must be open the same number of hours on those Saturdays or Sundays. So we would not be able to say, we want 2 of our 4 sites to be open on Saturday from 12 to 4 and the other 2 be closed. That would not be permitted. Next slide, Ryan. What I really want to talk to you about is locations. I think we talk about the challenge of finding polling places a lot in our board meetings. When we think about finding a location that can serve as an early voting location, the challenge is much greater because we are asking to use a facility for usually around 20 days when you allow for setup and breakdown at the end of voting, where really the space that they give us, nothing else can happen in that space in the duration that we're using it. So, we can't pack up everything and let another group come in on a Sunday if we're closed. So we really have challenges with that. So with that said, we do have a pretty solid plan for 3 satellite locations in the primary. And what I mean by solid plan is we have spoken to these facilities. They are aware of our intent to use these facilities, and they have blocked the calendar. Ryan, is that correct? So we do have in Leland, the Leland Cultural Arts Center. In the middle of the county, we have the Brunswick Center at Supply, and then in the western part of the county, we do have the Sunset Beach Community Center. I do want to talk a little bit about the Sunset Beach Community Center really fast. The reason is, in the primary election, we're gonna be looking at overall voter turnout by 20%, probably, if we look at historical midterm primary turnout. Sunset Beach Community Center is not very large, and it could probably accommodate what will come through during early voting in the midterm primary. We really need to start thinking down the road, where in that western part of the county could we go for early voting? So I just want to put that on the radar. And then of course at the government center, we utilize the cooperative extension. Ryan, if you go to the next slide. So you'll notice we don't have anything in the Shallotte area. Historically, we have been able to offer early voting in Shallotte. We currently do not have a location in that area. So the Brunswick Center at Shallotte, we historically used for early voting and election day. The challenge we face there is the space that we are given is not a true enclosure. It's really a wide open space inside of that room. And so we are able to stanchion off the area that we use, but other people are coming and going, and you can hear talking. We had to leave like a walkway at the edge of the enclosure so that patrons could utilize that space. And we were unable to find a way to make that space work without going into another room, and we can't use another room. So we have vacated the Brunswick Center at Shallotte for election day, and for the same reason that we needed to go somewhere else for election day, that space is not viable for early voting. That's my opinion. We also reached out to Focus Broadband, which is in Shallotte next to the high school. They do have a meeting room there. We had some dialogue about the meeting room, and that is not something that would work. And the challenge there also is that that's a private facility. Really, we are supposed to, by law, use a publicly funded facility, and only if we can't find one do we then go to a private facility. We've also looked at a building. It's called the Mulberry Park Building. It's not exactly at the park. The challenge there is parking is not sufficient. So that's not a viable option either. So we are out of options in the Shallotte area.
If we were to purchase screening material of some sort, could that be utilized in the Brunswick Center at Shallotte to cordon it off a little bit? I realize that the noise is not, it's not gonna stop noise, but it's gonna stop visual distractions.
I would have to go to the site and look at it and talk with the director of that location.
Now, I do realize that in that area, it's tough. I live there, as do several other folks, several members of our audience. And I'll be perfectly honest, I've spent the last 5 years looking for a good spot down that area, and it's escaped me, especially for early voting.
Yeah, I would look into that option. I do not think that's a workable option, but I will definitely pursue it and go take a look, or have her go take a look. Next slide, Ryan. The other area that we have a challenge with is the Southport Oak Island area. This is nothing new. We dealt with this going into the presidential election last fall. So in the fall, we ended up renting space at the Moose Lodge. That is a private facility. We were unable to find anything else. While it did work, we had successful early voting there. It had its challenges because it is also a business. So things were happening at that location for the business, such as dinners, there's a bar there, game days, things like that. And when that was happening at the same time that voting was happening, the parking lot got too full, and it really could not accommodate the voters coming and going. We had a lot of situations where electioneers were directing traffic, trying to help curbside voters figure out where to go. It it just was not an ideal situation, so I don't think that's a workable option moving forward. St. James Community Center, we faced the same challenges there that we faced last year when we were in discussions with St. James about utilizing the community center. The construction on Highway 11 is not finished. I do not know when it's supposed to be finished. And so we got a lot of pushback from the town about that, in addition to blocking off their rooms for that extended period of time. So if we were to enter into discussion with St. James in the future about early voting, they did want to talk about charging us a fee, like a daily fee for that. So that would be something to consider. But I think right now, with the construction still ongoing, I don't think that's a workable option. Ryan reached out to Duke Energy. They have a meeting space down there. We thought maybe we could get our foot in the door there, and that did not pan out. We previously looked at Brunswick Little Theater. That is not viable with the setup of the building and the way we would need to route traffic in and out to comply with ADA. It really just is not workable. Having voters come in, the accessible entrance would be what we would need to use for the exit for all other voters, and so that's just, there's not enough ways to adjust the traffic flow there. Parking is also challenging. We did reach out to Sacred Heart Church. The Southport City Gym was mentioned several times last year when we were looking for a polling place. The challenge there, it's street parking, so there's no designated parking lot, and so I don't think parking would work out there. And then again, the location we historically used was the Brunswick Center at Southport. I don't think there's any situation where that would be a viable early voting site again with how busy that shopping center has become. We can make it work for election day. We still utilize it for election day. But I think the 17 days of early voting, it's too much pressure on that facility as a whole, because the county does not own that whole facility. They only own the senior center portion. Any discussion about Southport or ideas?
What about the community college?
At the community college, we actually used to use that as a polling location. And the problem there, there's nowhere inside where we could have a single voting enclosure. When we used it, we actually used 2 classrooms across the hall, so voters would check in on one side and then go to the other. But that's not permitted by law, because observers and the chief judge need to be able to see the whole voting enclosure, so they don't have a space large enough.
Mr. Lewis?
I tell you, you have quite a challenge.
We do.
About it, when was the decision date for this?
So the state, I have not seen a drop dead decision date that our early voting plan is due. I anticipate that will be in the next month or so. So that's why I thought if we talked about it now, maybe someone would come up with a location that we haven't already had recommended to us or heard of. I'm really hoping that at our October meeting, we would be prepared to make a decision. So our October regular meeting is the 21st.
And you're gonna have 5 sites. Whatever, you're gonna have 5
In
locations.
a primary, I would have to go back and look.
Well,
Because I believe we would not normally have had the supply location, but we would have something in Shallotte and something in Southport.
Yeah, I think that, you have about 30,000 folks that live between Southport and, so.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have about 30,000 people who live down in that area, Southport area. And I would, it's gonna be a challenge, but what I'll do is I will look in the area, if I can find anything around, it's okay, but I'll call around.
Please do, yes. And last year we had dialogue with the manager at the time of the city of Southport, the police chief. I mean, we reached out to anyone we could think of. Commissioner Sykes, who represents that area, and anything that got brought to us, we looked into, and just nothing really worked out.
Yeah, but for the primaries, 30,000 would translate into 20 to 25% is 6,700 voters over the course of 14, 12 to 14 days. So it's not as many as we're gonna have in the general.
Mr. Meyer, I believe you live in Southport, do you not? There. Perhaps if I could suggest to the director that Mr. Lewis, Mr. Meyer may be able to help somehow or another with trying to locate something in the Southport area, St. James Southport area. Mr. Smutsky and I both live in the southwest area. Perhaps we could work with the staff and try to help find something in that area. I'm not guaranteeing any results, but at least we'll make an effort.
Yes.
But you're okay with the Sunset Beach?
For the primary, it will work. If we have nothing else, I'm not saying I wouldn't use it in the general election. But it's just not large enough, and the parking there is not easy enough to maneuver to make that, I would not wanna have another presidential election early voting at that site.
And we've talked to the Sea Trail.
Oh, yeah, we can go to the next slide, Ryan? Yes. So down there, we have talked to the senior center in Calabash. The challenge there, they have a long-term lease with the church, so the church needs that building every Sunday. And, the layout is such that there are no separate rooms, there's no separation, it's not like ballrooms where we can, have it, it's just one big open space. Ryan did go, Ryan and Adrian actually went and spoke with the people at the Sea Trail Convention Center. They were not opposed to us using it for early voting. I think for a larger, presidential election, that's definitely something we're going to look into. It will cost probably a significant amount of money to rent it. We didn't get into the specifics of what that would cost. I don't think for a primary election, that's really viable. I honestly don't know. We might have to look into it for the general next fall if we don't find something in Southport, or Shallotte, I'm sorry. Because when you look at the spread of the county, sometimes Shallotte can take some pressure off that western part of the county. People are going up there, going to Walmart, or doing their other business in Shallotte, having something there, they can utilize that for early voting. But there's nothing there, I think we're gonna have a challenge in that western part of the county. Yes.
I would concur.
Next one.
I think it is important that we all keep in mind what we're trying to do is set up for 2028.
Yes.
And, it's 3 years away, but based upon the influx of residents to the county, by 2028, we could have another 20,000, just guessing. We got 140,000 voters today. It's not going down, so.
This slide is really just for information, and I kind of already touched on this. We should be looking for a building that is supported by tax dollars. So, municipal building, a park building, it says school. I would not use a school. I don't know of a school in the county that we could easily do early voting in. But that's what we're really looking for. If we cannot find a publicly funded building, again, just like the newsflash, we're permitted to use a private facility. We do have to get approval from the State Board of Elections for that. And a private facility is going to come with a price tag.
But we did pay the Moose one, right?
We did pay the newsflash, yeah. Yes. Next slide, Ryan.
Before we go too much farther,
Yeah.
on schools, I've been on the board for 12 years. That has been an issue for 12 years. Why don't we use the schools? Am I correct that we have worked with the Board of Ed to get a teacher work day on election day?
Election days, we're good with the schools.
So
being
we're
closed.
good with the schools.
Yes.
Just so everybody knows, many of the Brunswick County schools are constructed in such a manner that they have classroom areas, they have the cafeteria, and the gymnasium is off the hallway between the main classroom areas and the cafeteria. one of the reasons that we were not able to utilize the schools is that we would have student traffic continuously during the day, crossing voters coming in to use the voting systems in the gymnasium. That's basically the only place within the school systems. Senator Miller, when he was on the board of education, this was one of his hot buttons. And he was very concerned about security of the students with public coming in and out. So that's one of the reasons today we have election day as a work day. There are no students present, and why we can't utilize some of these schools for early voting because of the 17 days. You can't keep the kids out of school for 17 days. So that's just, want to put that on the record.
And then I just wanted to touch on the timeline of requesting to use a public building, and we really saw this come up when we were working at St. James last fall. So it's not as simple as us saying we would like to use your facility and then saying yes, or if they say no, we just get to use it. There is this kind of back and forth process, so if we were to find a publicly funded facility, it's not necessarily guaranteed that we would be able to use it if there were pushback. Because if there's not an agreement upon you all, us, and the managers of that publicly funded facility, it could end up with the state board of elections to make a decision. So we would prefer to find a publicly funded facility that would maybe not be happy to have us, but would be happy to work with us and let us use their facility. I don't think any early voting sites are ever particularly happy that we're coming in and taking over. It's very disruptive to what goes on in these facilities, but I would definitely prefer to find a location where we could work something out and be agreeable.
Yeah. So does work something out include paying that?
We have never paid an early voting site that is a tax supported building. I do not know that I would be opposed to it. There's no rule that says we would not pay them because they're tax supported. So like St. James gave us a daily figure that they would want us to pay to help pay staff and cleaning and security and things like that at their community building. I haven't budgeted to pay any early voting sites, so I would have to go to the commissioners to get money. But two, if you start paying one publicly funded facility, are they all going to expect us to pay to utilize their facilities? And what's that going to do to our budget that's already constrained pretty tightly? So, next slide, Ryan, if there is one, I don't know if there is. So I did in your packet, you have a printout of the table with the days that early voting happens. I do propose that for the government center location, we stick to office hours, 8:30 to 5. In future elections, like maybe the general next year, I am considering, and staff is considering, expanding the hours for the location here to match the satellite locations, just because we are having a lot of growth right around the government complex here, so we would probably see more traffic than we have in the past. And then I just wanted to lay out for you what the Monday through Friday schedule would be for the satellite locations. And so when we come back to make a final decision, one, we're gonna need to determine where our satellite locations are. And two, the board will be charged with deciding what voting hours you want for Saturdays and Sundays. Not the final Saturday, that is 8 to 3 for all the sites, but the other 2 weekends.
That is a discussion that we have every year.
It is, but I thought it might be helpful if you had the table layout and you could look at what the decision needs to be. I'm also happy to provide you, I can email you like what past schedules we had, things like that, if that would be helpful.
I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
And again, I didn't have anything else to discuss regarding the early voting schedule. I just really wanted us to have the opportunity to talk about it. maybe discussing it in open session, you know, where the parties might have some wonderful ideas for me, I'm all ears for early voting location. I would love to be able to offer a site in the Shallow area and the Southport area, but right now I just don't have a location to use, so.
Seems that, there are no perfect solutions, we make the best of what we can.
Yes. Alright, with the slideshow, okay, and then we do have one more agenda item, like me to move to that one?
Sorry?
Would you like me to go ahead with the next agenda item, the final agenda item?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the last thing I'm bringing to the board is a resolution to delegate absentee administrative tasks to the staff, the director and the staff. I will preface this discussion that this is nothing new, this is how we've operated for years. This exact resolution has been in place since 2023 with no changes. Because we've had a changing of board members, I thought it would be a good idea to have all of the board members consider this resolution again to make sure that we are still on the same page about how our absentee meetings will operate when we start having those next month. I am not going to read this whole resolution. I'm hoping that you looked at it when I emailed it to you. I do want to touch on some of the things in it. Everything in this numbered memo, or everything in this resolution was pulled from the law or a numbered memo or the administrative code. Like, so we did not go into creating this resolution by just making things up. So we do have, some way that we're allowed to do the things in this. What I think is particularly worth noting is that ballot duplication, you would be allowing staff to continue duplicating military and overseas ballots using a bipartisan team prior to the absentee meetings. So we would bring in a team, they would have bipartisan representation, 4 members, and they would duplicate electronically received military and overseas ballots by using a caller and a tallier and checking their work essentially. And then we would come into the board meeting and the board members would review the original ballot and the duplication before approving that set of ballots. But what that just allows is, because we're getting those electronically returned ballots not in an envelope and those voters are, you know, waiving that that extra privacy that someone mailing the ballot would have, we are permitted to do that duplication ahead of time, and that does save a lot of time in our absentee meetings. And it also just fills out the process where we are taking all of those preparatory steps at these absentee meetings leading up to election day, where the board is reviewing any absentee ballots that have been received. Any that are approved, we go ahead and have a bipartisan team in the board meeting, open those ballots, we scan those ballots into a machine. Once we're finished, we're checking numbers, how many ballots were approved in this meeting, how many ballots were scanned. Then we're sealing everything up, we're recording seal numbers, and the central scan, which is the voting system that's scanning those ballots, is turned off. And then at the start of the next meeting, we're confirming the vote count on it. So everything is happening in the presence of the board, and once that board meeting finishes, we are securing the ballots with seals that are not to open unless we need to get back in it for like a recount proceeding or to pull a challenge ballot. That's another situation we go back in those, but that's just something we've always done, and again, that makes our ability to get the count out on election day much quicker.
Just for the record, for the folks in the audience, I think I'm probably the only one up here that was sat and duplicated ballots and done hand-eye counts. And I will admit, I trust the staff a whole lot more than this old man doing that process. After doing elections for 23 years, I've come to realize that the single worst way to tally ballots, not duplicate them, but tally them and count them, is hand count. So getting it into the machine count, machine does not make mistakes. They're all tested ahead of time to ensure that they meet all the standards and they're counting fairly and correctly. That's one of the public meetings that we have in the early stages of getting ready for the election. So I personally wholeheartedly support the staff doing these functions. When it comes to duplicating ballots, Sarah mentioned the caller or the talliers. In reality, having a caller, somebody who reads the ballot, two folks that independently tally what that person is reading. We have at least 2 or 3 more folks standing behind all of them to ensure that they've done that correctly. And this is all bipartisan teams, and we get opposite parties. And then you have usually 1 or 2 of the board members watching the checkers who are checking folks reading. So each one of these teams could be as many as 6 or 7 people watching that process. So I just wanted everybody to know that, we do everything we possibly can to ensure the accuracy and fairness of every ballot that comes into this organization. Madam Director?
That's all I had. If you have any other questions about the resolution or want to discuss it further.
Gentlemen?
On section 9 about duplication, our chair was indicating that a board member was watching over them.
So
But
I believe what Randy might have been referring to is when we duplicate ballots in the board meeting, so there's a damaged ballot. We do have a bipartisan team here for those duplications, and typically when that happens, the board members will go down and watch the
and
process.
the people in the audience can watch it as well. But this UOCAVA doesn't have anybody but staff.
But staff and the bipartisan team, correct?
Oh, okay, so the bipartisan team, they're not staff.
Well, we pay them, they're temporary staff that come in to
Yeah.
serve as the bipartisan team, yes.
But you're allowed to do it with 3.
I believe so, we typically use 4.
I would like 4.
Yeah, we typically use 4 where the person calling ballot is one party and someone with them is watching what they call is of the other party. And same thing on the other side, the tallier. So the tallier is one party and the person watching what the person tallies is of the opposite party.
And that's what I've always watched
Yes.
here, and I think it's a good idea to have 4 when you're
Yes.
duplicating ballots.
And they do sign a log, so you would always know who participated in that ballot application process.
And one of the reasons we do that is to get ballots in a machine readable format, and also in the case of provisional ballots that might be out of precinct where we do not have to do this, we are required by state rule or law, I'm not sure which, to report statistics based upon precincts at the conclusion of every election. So having everybody gets a precinct-specific ballot to your home precinct. The ballot that I get in Bristoltown looks to the naked eye exactly like the ballot that David would get in Carolina Shores, but statistically, they would be counted differently when the statistics of who counted, how many people voted, so on and so forth. And all that data goes to the state. It goes precinct-specific data. That's one of the reasons we have to do all of this. Madam Director, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay,
I have a question about UOCAVA. Okay, and since the chair was talking about the appropriate precincts, where do the UOCAVA ballots get assigned precincts?
Whatever address that voter provided us when they registered.
Okay, and when you duplicated the ballot,
Yeah, we're duplicating on the same ballot. So the electronically returned ballots do have that same indication, just like a ballot you would receive a precinct. So we just put it on that exact same ballot style, but just an official ballot that can read to the machine.
And the approval of this resolution is going to be for 2 years or in perpetuity?
It really indefinitely, I just really thought with the change of board members that it was prudent to look at it again.
I like that.
So we can review it,
We've obviously had some
Yeah.
questions.
yeah, we can review it as often as you guys would like.
I would recommend that we at least review it and get a concurrence of any new members.
Okay.
That's just.
What I would like to do at this point is suggest that we hold off voting on it until the next meeting. Mrs. Clary will be back at that time and give her an opportunity to comment on that.
I move we table.
Okay. Mr. Woods, okay?
That's fine with me.
Is that all right, Madam Director?
That's certainly fine with me.
Okay. I have nothing else specific on the agenda. So, was anything else? I'm sorry, okay. I do need to, thank you. We need a motion to table until the next meeting on the approval of the resolution of delegated administrative duties.
I made the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you for keeping me honest. Just as an aside, I did some fast number crunching the other day, and everybody thinks municipal elections in Brunswick County are not that important because not everybody is going to be voting. But the folks that do have the opportunity to vote in our 19 municipalities are actually voting for 108 commissioner seats. There's 5 seats to H2Go. H2Go is a water company in the northern end of Brunswick County. There are 5 seats on the Southeast Brunswick Sewer Authority in the Southport area, and also 7 seats on the hospital, Dozier Hospital. So while not all of those seats come up, may or may not come up for re-election in every municipal election, there's a total of 126 different positions that we are covering during municipal elections. As Sarah said earlier, we have 19 municipalities. They range in anything from 45 or 50,000 in Leland, I think, to a couple of hundred in Varntown, off of 211. So it's an interesting mix and an interesting combination. And we may have probably one of the most complicated balloting systems for municipal elections of any county in the state, only because of the number of municipalities and special election districts we have. I don't know, do we know how many different ballot styles?
62, I believe.
62 ballot styles. Well, some of those may look the same, maybe you get a combination of towns, municipalities, special election districts.
And precinct is part of
And
that.
precincts.
Yeah.
It's a monumental effort, and I assume Mr. Johnson did most of that effort.
Yes, he did.
Would you thank him on behalf of the board?
I will.
How many people do we have voting in the municipals?
We have, hold on, let me make sure my computer's still on, because I do have that for you. I've probably been logged out of scenes, I feel like I have it up. Hold on just a second. The last time I ran the numbers was 86,659.
Out of about 140,000 plus or minus total.
More than I would have thought.
Excuse me?
That's more than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Mr. Mr. Lewis, anything else?
No, I have nothing else for this evening.
Mr. Smoky?
Good, thank you.
Mr. Meyer? Okay. Note that our next meeting will be on Tuesday, October the 7th at 4 p.m. in these chambers, and it will be an absentee meeting, which means we will be counting, or not counting, but processing paper ballots returned by mail.
Can I add a note to your announcement of that meeting?
Yes, ma'am?
If you're interested in coming to meetings, please sign up for our email list. If we get to that date, because ballots get mailed just that previous Friday, if we don't have any ballots to consider, we will cancel that meeting. I don't want you to come here at 4 o'clock to see this chamber is empty, so I just thought I would put that out there. If there are no ballots to consider, we will not have a meeting that day. And that will go out through our sunshine list email.
Thank you. Also, somebody keeping me honest. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip home.